Hello, everyone. Today we have Todd Schaffhauser, who became an above-knee amputee at the age of 15, went on to win multiple Paralympic medals, and set world records in sprinting. He pioneered a step-over-step running technique for above-knee amputees, co-founded the Amputee Walking School in 1988, and was inducted as an honorary lifetime member of the American Academy of Orthotists and Prosthetists in 2002. So basically, Todd's a total badass. Thanks, Todd, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing great. Your story and getting to know you has been a real inspiration to me and to us at Humotech. So recording this episode is a long time coming. I was hoping you could set the stage for our audience with a little background on your journey as an athlete and how that inspired a career in helping others move better and be more mobile with prosthetics.
Yeah, it was something that definitely was not, intended. When I was diagnosed with bone cancer back in 1984, and then I had an amputation in early 1985, it was just a long journey of rehab to be able to get to where I wanted to be, which is just a normal kid, going to school and, uh, you know, I was never someone I was not in little league. I didn't have any high school sports experience. Everything came after my rehab and after the chemotherapy was finished, and I started to learn how to use my prosthetic. My physical therapist was the one that actually inspired me to become a Paralympic athlete because it was basically just an extension of rehab. And, I didn't know what to experience, what was going to be. My first competition was back in 1986 down in Nashville, Tennessee. I was everything is always categorized in the Paralympics and the national. So I was the above the amputee category. I came in last place. I ran a time of 26.8 seconds, if I remember right. I lost by 10 seconds that day. When I got up out of the blocks and I looked down the field was halfway down the track already. And I was just so amazed by what they were able to do that right there, that moment inspired me to want to do more.
Wow.
Yeah. It
So
was,
did you feel like that was part technique, part technology, part yourself, your own internal struggle with mobility? I don't know. What was the hurdle you saw that you needed to overcome?
so everyone was running on a walking leg. That was the
Mm.
first thing. So it was just my first prosthetic at that point in time. It was nothing special. Hydraulic knee. It was actually a Seattle Lightfoot at the time. So a real basic kind of foot.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Running.
Yeah, that's what everyone was using. They didn't have carbon fiber yet, really, in the field. And everyone was running a hop skip style of running. That was the technique. That was the way to do it. And so when I was running that way, I just always got beat. I just wasn't able to be competitive. So I had to find another way. And that's when I saw what the athletes were able to do. I saw that I needed to find another way to be able to be competitive. So I had, the inspiration by watching and seeing, but I wasn't able to do it. And that's the thing was that, I had to really try to see what training I could do differently and to run step over step. I didn't know if it was going to be better. I just knew I had to do something different. And I remember training on the treadmill I used to train at. The same place I did my rehab was the place I trained for the Paralympics, Suffolk Sports Training Center in Hop Hog, Long Island, which was really the first true, Paralympic training center, if you really look at it, because of the athletes that came out of there. But on the treadmill that they had, it went up to 15 miles per hour. And I remember walking on that treadmill at 1 mile per hour, holding on. And my therapist, who was my track coach, David Balsley, he said to me, if you want to be able to be competitive, you got to be able to top this treadmill at 15 miles per hour, and you got to hold it for 15 seconds, because that, when the time would get you to be a 15-second 100-meter dash, which would make you very, very competitive. And it took a long time to be able to learn to do that. A lot of trial and error.
So, what was your favorite or your proudest athletic performance?
I would actually say it was in Berlin, Germany at the World Games. Ottobock hosted an event back in 1995, because it was the first time that I went under 15 seconds. I ran a time of 14.55, and that was something that I worked really, really hard to break that barrier, because that was the barrier to get under 15 seconds. And I came very close a lot of times. I ran a 15:1, a 15:09, but I was never able to get under that, and I had to do a lot of tweaking of the prosthetic and a lot of different training to be able to get that kind of leg turnover speed. What we tried to do with the hydraulics was to be able to, we had in the very beginning, it was 120 degrees of knee flexion. You basically would rebound off the hydraulic, the chassis, which would hold the hydraulic knee. You would kind of rebound. And thing is, what we needed to do was to be able to limit that and go down to what wound up being 60 degrees of knee flexion. So that really relied on the technology to be able to increase the amount of resistance that the knee could hold, and give you. But the problem is that the knees were not able to do that, because they always got so hot that the seals would burst. So you would have a revolving door of hydraulic knees. I'd go through like 12 to 15 knees in a year, to be able to keep the training going, but also have one that's going to be able to be used on competition day, because you're always worried about, is that, is this the day that this knee is not going to hold up? But eventually they did. And I was really, really fortunate to have the hydraulic companies. K-Tech was the company at the time. It was a lot of the guys who came over from Malk. Malk was the first knee I used. K-Tech was the second knee. And, when I first started running, the Malk knee has been around for a very, very long time at that point, but no one was ever using it the way I was using it. So it really pushed the barriers of what the technology was able to do.
So, did those conversations with the manufacturers evolve naturally? I mean, you're running on these products, you're pushing the limits, they're breaking. You're probably calling them up asking for replacements. Uh,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
with
they were incredible the way, I needed a replacement overnight, and they would do that, and it was just incredible. But they actually invited me up so I can see is what was inside the hydraulics, and there were over 100 different parts, and this could break, this could fail, and I really had a true understanding of just what the technology was. And I was really just very fortunate to be able to work with the manufacturers to be able to, one show is that this could be done, but secondly is to have the technology get better so that it could be utilized for anyone that wants to use it after me.
So, you and I have been getting to know each other more recently, and I know you've been walking a lot on the Bionic M leg. I just saw your post about 2 million steps, which is super cool. Has this been a theme throughout your career since the beginning? Then, getting in with these companies and helping to provide that user centric perspective.
Yeah, because I think that engineering needs to really be, they need to have more amputees that are involved in engineering. Ionic M, I love that company. Sonny, who is the owner and the inventor, he's an amputee, above the amputee. Another company, Roadrunner Foot, out of Italy. Daniel, he's below the knee amputee. They're both great engineers. They're great owners of their company, and they're incredible people. But they're also both amputees. So they live it, and they know they're trying to fill a need, which they might think is trying to improve themselves, but it's also going to help everybody else. So it's something that, is a very unique situation to have those two companies that I'm involved with, and just testing. But the Bionic M is something that's really changed my life in a way, because I never thought I would need a device like that. It's always about strength and about using voluntary muscle control. But what I learned about what the device does is that, it's a powered knee. It fills in a lot of the gaps that you can't do on your own. And that's something where, like walking upstairs, it was the first time I experienced as an amputee 40 years to walk upstairs step over step. That's where you have to use muscles, but also you have to let technology do what it does. And you have to learn to trust it. And I think this is something that's going to really change the future, because most above the amputees, when they walk upstairs, they walk up with the good, down with the bad. To be able to walk upstairs step over step and have that be something natural is going to change, a lot of people's lives. Because now you're talking about Mr. Jones, who is, maybe in his mid 50s, like I am, and maybe he's, diabetic vascular patient, and his bedroom is on the second floor, but now he has to live on the first floor because stairs is just something that's a very difficult thing to do. Where now it can be something that's just a natural thing that he learns in rehab.
Yeah, I think you have a really special perspective on both, the advancement of technology and also the development of the techniques for walking and the training component, plus your own lived experience. Um, yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm lucky to know you because I don't have that lived experience to ground some of the decisions I make, so I have to do a lot of listening and having conversations like this one.
Well, and that's what I've done basically over the last, 37 years or so doing the walking school all over the world is that, I've got to work with over 30,000 amputees, and I stopped counting years ago. But I get to meet so many people of so many different levels of amputation and, trauma, vascular, cancer, and just learn is this what they need and how can I help them? And, the biggest thing that people always ask me is, like back in the beginning was when I was running was, how did you do that? And, I was just a young kid at the time. I was going to physical therapy school for a couple of years, but I wanted to show them is this is how. And I was able to show it. And that's where I think that it really helped to benefit because for the first time you could actually mimic a movement and see what life is going to be like. And it really changed rehab. It changed, prosthetics, and it changed the Paralympics because a lot more people got involved. Most of my world records were broken by people that I trained, and I
Oh,
saw
that's
the
cool.
group I saw the Paralympics grow from 1988 to my last was 1996, where in the beginning in '88 it was just a straight final to where you now in 1996 you had quarterfinals, semifinals, and a full final. So just more people participating just because of being out there and showing them that it could be done.
Hmm. Um, I've been meaning to ask you, with all the work you've done as an athlete and in the Paralympics, um, how has that informed the work you do day to day, which I imagine is mostly with people who have lower mobility and walking ability?
Yeah, so I'm really lucky I get to work with a group called Care Centers. They're a subacute group, and so I work at subacute rehab. Whenever I'm not traveling, I'm working in some place in skilled nursing, and it's been incredible because most people are older patients, and what I've been able to do is to take all the training techniques that I would do at the outpatient program and bring them inpatient. So I'm showing people things that they might not learn until maybe a year down the road. They're actually learning it very early on. And that changes, it builds a better foundation. And that's what I always like to say. We got to build a better foundation on that skilled nursing or acute rehab side so that when someone gets to home care and they get to outpatient, they're just better prepared. When someone comes to see me at the Amputee Walking School in the community, if they're learning it for the first time, it's a year too late. So it's something where, the sooner they can learn this, the sooner that they can get up and going and doing things and living life again. And one of the things I do at skilled nursing is also an early ambulation program with something it's called ischial bypass prosthesis, which has been around for a long time, but just hadn't been used. And I saw this program taking place up in Detroit at St. John's Medical Center, of where they had an amputee when I went into the inpatient gym. This gentleman was 76 years old, above knee amputee. He had missing his metatarsals on the other side, but he was walking on this ischial bypass prosthesis 4 days after surgery. And I saw that and I was like, this is incredible. I had never seen that before. And I was like, how do they do this? And I learned more about it. And then I brought it to the inpatient program at the subacute level. So we again build a better foundation because, if someone, let's say, if they wait, let's say 100-day Medicare stay, if somebody waits, until the leg heals and then it gets started with their prosthetic and then it gets delivered, how many days do we actually have with them to do ambulatory therapy, standing and walking and stairs? And it's not a lot of time. But when you have a program like this in place of early ambulation, you're getting like 90 days of standing and walking, which is very valuable time.
Hmm.
So that when someone leaves us, they're just more prepared. They get delivered the prosthesis, but they've already learned how to do safe turns, standing up properly, weight shifting properly. It's just a lot of things that are learned very early on, which makes a huge difference in the outcomes. And that's what we're seeing. It's something that I talk about at the walking schools and when I do the programs, but it hasn't really caught on as much as I thought, and this is why I'm so happy with the group I'm working with because they really are all in on trying to help our amputees in any way they can to get them up and going because they see the difference. They see the outcome.
It's really interesting. It makes me think about our core work at Humotech, where we're providing this capability to trial different foot options. I often get asked when in the rehab journey is the ideal time to go through this experience and explore different options. And I feel like, my engineer's answer is, well, as soon as, the patient can bear weight safely and they have approval from their physician, we would love to see them. Sooner is better. But sometimes we do get the feedback that, early in the prosthetic journey, you're quote unquote not ready. Uh, I don't know. Do you have any perspective on that? Is that sort of related to the reticence that you're talking about with early ambulation?
Yeah, so it's for above knee and below the knee with the device. The device is locked for safety. It unlocks for sitting, but they only use it during the rehab session. So if they're wearing it for 45 minutes to an hour. But as far as the foot goes, this is where I've been trying to push the prosthetic companies to let them experience something that's going to be better. Not just a satch foot. Let's try to get them something which is going to be more dynamic so they get a chance to feel what it's like. And so some companies are doing that, but some just want to keep it with the simple basic kind of foot. But the ones that see and experience the better technology of like a true carbon graphite foot, they are understanding this is what I like, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, we just kicked off our clinical pilots with a local prosthetics clinic here in town called Eliza. And one of the patients who came in, um, was on that temporary foot, and the difference was just so dramatic. Once they had the opportunity to trial different foot options, so I mean that really motivates me. But the way referrals happen in healthcare is sometimes a barrier. You don't necessarily have access to the patient when you'd like to. Um,
Patients need to be the better the more education they get
yeah,
about their rehab, the better decisions they and the family can make about where they need to go. I mean, I love acute rehab. Acute, is awesome. If you can get 2 weeks of acute rehab, I always say go. But the difference is that when you have an early ambulation program in place, Mr. Jones can go to an acute rehab, and in most cases, he gets discharged to home. but he's getting discharged on a rolling walker. He's hopping.
Mhm.
Maybe he's still a fall risk. Whereas if they go to a longer term, let's say subacute program with an early ambulation program in place, 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, that same 2 week timeline, they're walking down the hallway and they're walking with a rolling walker and they're doing a lot more stuff. So it's just a matter of just having the whole rehab uh, community just catch up to what is just a different way of doing things, something that's going to be a better protocol.
Mm. Um, would would you say there's a mental health component of what you're talking about with the acute rehab too? I have to imagine meeting you, hearing your story, and having your guidance would be inspiring and motivating at a time where you're probably feeling kind of low.
Well, it's mentorship. I'm a big believer in mentorship. I've been doing that forever. What I see about mentorship is that, hope. I always say hope gives effort, and then effort gives independence. One doesn't happen without the other. So we have to give Mr. Jones hope that he's going to be able to do this and be okay. But it's different with the walking school because hope is through example. They can see what life is going to be like, 3 weeks down the road, 3 months down the road, me 40 years down the road. And that's what people need to see. I can talk to someone and say 1,000 words about things are going to be okay. Mr. Jones, everything's going to be okay. But if I can show you with that visual that things are going to be okay, that's a life changing moment. And these life changing moments need to happen not just for amputees, just for people in general. I see, when I'm working with someone and there's maybe someone that suffered a stroke and they see what's happening, and what we're doing on the rehab side, and it motivates them. So it's just, you need to give that person hope, but hope is a visual a lot of times. And that visual is, again, that life changing moment. And sometimes that doesn't happen until the person gets to outpatient therapy. Sometimes it doesn't happen until they get to the Amputee Walking School. I always talk a lot about you counting your steps, and I always bring about how I've met people that were not walking a lot, and now they're walking a lot more. But that takes time to get on that track of, someone just checking in with you to say, "Hey, how you doing? How much did you walk today?" Because that's not really being done. And when someone, like, I always wonder that when somebody leaves me at the subacute or leaves me at the walking school, how much are they walking? How much are they doing? And now what I've tried to do more of in the last so many years is to be able to build a community and bring that community together so that we can see who's walking more and people are motivating people. And that mentorship is very valuable. Peer versus peer, peer to peer and amputee to amputee is the best way to really help someone get over that initial depression that they might feel, to get them to understand that things are going to be okay.
Mhm. So the Amputee Walking School, as I understand it, is primarily organized around these like 1 day events. Um, do you have other ways of kind of keeping in touch with people and helping them connect with each other?
Yeah, it's so in building the community, I have the website Amputee Walking School, awssteps.com. That's the way people track their steps. So it's building that community. So when people log on and they put their steps in, it goes onto a leaderboard. And on that leaderboard, they can be able to see, I'm in Kentucky, you're in Indiana. This is how you're doing. I'm an above the amputee, you're an above the amputee. So they get a chance to see what the pathway is like. Uh, the full day clinics are something that, I always like to give people what they want. And that's what people have asked for, is to have not something that's every single day, because that's therapy, but something that when they can have is therapists together with amputees and with family members, and they're all learning at the same time. So we have is the learning session and then a lab session. And it's just a great atmosphere where people can see that I'm brand new. This is this is what life is like 3 months down the road. Or I already know how to walk. I want to learn to do more. Can you show me how to do more? And we can work on that as well.
So, I'm already working on bringing the Amputee Walking School back to Pittsburgh, but if someone's listening and they want to participate or bring the school to them, what can they do?
Well, it's all these programs happen because of a need, a local need. And so UPMC Hospital, I've hosted many programs there. Allegheny hosted programs there. There have been many sponsors of the program. Union OMP was a great friend to the program for many years. If someone's hearing about the program, they just need to contact the rehab director of the hospital or contact your prosthetist and say, hey, I've heard about this program. I want to bring it to town, and then they can reach out and we can try to put it together. So I know it's UPMC Hospital is one of some of my best programs. You know, we had over 125 people. It was just incredible. And that this we love to come back. Love to come back and bring it back to Pittsburgh.
That's great. You go to a lot of the industry conferences too, don't you?
Yes, I love to learn. Could never stop learning.
Yeah, I've enjoyed seeing you at the booths. Um, we've mostly gone to the conferences that are sort of geared towards the practitioner or the researcher. But do you also go to like the Amputee Coalition type of meetings that are more direct to consumer, I guess?
I haven't been to one in a long time, but it's ones that, more people now are asking me about bringing the program to the conferences, which I would love to do. I'm going to be bringing it to Hangar Alive, actually, for the first time ever. Hangar has something called Empower Fest. I've done the program at physical therapy conferences before. It's great when I can do that because I get to reach a lot more people that don't know about the program. So, yeah, I sometimes, it's hard to get the whole entire industry together, prosthetists, rehab. I love talking to case managers. Case managers are a big referral source to the
Mm,
program. Vascular surgeons, their PAs, nurse practitioners, they all can help to have people know about the program. And that's something where whenever I get a chance to do an in-service or to speak to any of the individuals that are helping the amputee and on their team, I want to do that. It's something that just helps to get the word out.
hmm. Can you elaborate on case managers? I haven't interacted with many. So who are they typically employed by?
The hospitals, yeah. So case managers, every case manager is working with the patient and they're working on a discharge plan. So they get to be able to educate them on just what's the next steps, where to go for rehab if you're going acute, where to go to rehab if you're going subacute, programs of the community. I get a lot of people that find out about the Amputee Walking School from a case manager. They might not be ready to go to the program immediately, but they at least hear about it. So it's something that the more case managers, that's why I got us accredited for national accreditation for case managers, because I want to be able to educate them about what the program, the goals, objectives, and how to refer.
Huh. So you're officially recognized as a provider of some kind of service then?
Just
Or
a course, accredited for a
okay.
course. Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Just to have
Interesting.
them understand about what the protocol is and what the goals and objectives and how to refer.
Yeah, there's so many different specialists along that care continuum, and I feel like having someone to help you connect the dots can be really game changing.
And they can help too, as when someone is contemplating amputation at the hospital or just had an amputation, to be able to help set up that first mentoring session. So the mentoring session could take place at the hospital, or sometimes it takes place over a FaceTime. The case manager will reach out and say, "Hey, Mr. Jones is contemplating amputation. Can you talk to him? Talk to his family. Talk to his wife." And so that's happened many times, and that's something where again have that person be able to want to meet someone who's another amputee, maybe someone that's going to be the same level amputation as they are, but to be able to ask the questions about what's going to happen next. And I can be able to answer those questions.
Wow. So you said uh you lost count at 30,000?
Yeah.
That's a huge number. You must have an insane Rolodex of people you worked with.
I get people that reach out to me that I haven't been in contact with in a very, very long time. But yeah, it's a lot of people all over the world, people that reach out. A lot of my competitors still reach out to me, and they say thank you about, because I taught them how to run, but just become great friends. They are mentors in their own country or their own state. It's incredible.
Hmm. So you've
People helping people.
how many continents have you done the Amputee Walking School on then?
I can't give you a lot.
Uh,
You name a place,
uh,
I've probably been there.
I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to Jordan. I did a program in Jordan. That was incredible. That was technology was not uh up to date there, but the people's will were way way advanced of what they wanted, and that helped to really show the prosthetic facilities that just they need to get things updated. When people want to do more, it drives technology.
Yeah, uh, clearly, and I feel like against all odds, that is what's powering this industry forward, right? There's so many technological challenges and institutional barriers and just resistance to innovation. So, yeah, keeping that spark alive seems critical.
When there's a need, when I was running, and I was breaking the devices, there was a need to get something better. Socket technology, just the same. The socket technology had to get better. How do you capture someone? How do you stop rotation from happening? The hydraulics to not get so hot and break. The feet, carbon graphite feet. When a flex foot first came out, everyone was running heel toe, heel toe. But then I realized that we don't really run on your heel when you're sprinting, you run on the toe.
Hmm.
So how can we get the foot to be able to help us? And in the beginning, the C that you see now, a giant C. Well, in the beginning, it wasn't a giant C. It was just a walking foot with wedges to point the foot down.
Right.
But then we would put so much pressure that it would break. So they tried to make it stronger. Then it was too strong. It was too stiff. So finding that right balance, and then we saw that the athletes were getting better because they were able to train better, and they wanted then to push it to another level to where you now have what you see here. You got, bilateral below the knee amputees that are running faster than single below the knee amputees, which is incredible.
So, it's something I've never really understood about running with prosthetics is that um, I have to imagine the management of what's going on inside the socket is crucial. Um, do you is that an extra? I mean, all athletes have to think about injury and work through pain, and just tell me about what that's like as an amputee runner. I feel like that must be a next level of grit you've got to have.
There's a lot of forces that are generated, and
Hmm.
that's something where, you don't know where those forces are going to be. And it could be different on different days, depending on what you're doing. Like when I would run 100 meters versus when I would train for the 400 meters, it was very different of what was happening inside the socket. I always was trying to prevent things from happening. So I would try to, if I knew certain areas were going to get more pressure, I would put just hydrocolloid bandages, second skin back in the day. Just try to put something on the limb to be able to prevent any kind of friction or any kind of pressure. And that was always tough to manage because you always wanted to make sure that the socket stays on you perfectly and you got great suction. I use a suction socket. I also used a Silesian belt because I wanted to make sure that the leg was always part of me. Whenever I moved it, it would move with me and not have a fear of it falling off. And I've seen some athletes that would not use a Silesian belt because they're like, why do I need a Silesian belt? And then the prosthesis would fall off.
It's redundant, but good to have.
Yeah, it's like just a safety, just
Hmm.
like a safety just to make sure that but that allows you to train better and that allows you to perform better and consistent. You always never have that worry. But if you would get a breakdown, then it's something that could take you out of a race because, as much as you're as tough as you are, uh, when you get those pressures on a certain area, if it hurts, it hurts. And that goes with walking and everyday life, you got to make sure that everything is fitting properly, but you're not going to know if it fits properly until you're actually doing that activity. And when you're sprinting, you're at that high level activity. If I'm running on a treadmill at 15 miles per hour, I got to do that so many times to understand what it feels like. So you got to be able to be prepared and trained just to be able to find out what it feels like at that level. So it's a lot of interval training and a lot of time, a lot of trial and error.
I never thought about the variability issue. We take for granted that you put your shoes on every day and they basically fit in the same way. Not the same with a prosthetic socket.
No, you got rotation, you got, a lot of things happening, the range of motion of your hip. Some people have their socket designed, the walls are high, some the socket, there's no issue containment at all. Just talking above knee. But that makes a huge difference on how everything feels and how you control it.
Right. So you strike me as a very positive guy. But have you had any moments in that journey where, it felt really frustrating and like you didn't know if you could keep doing it?
Yeah, you know, what the problem with the Paralympics is that they try to combine categories, and that's where it was just really tough. And for me, the above knee category was always like the experimental. So like bilateral below the knee amputees, they first popped up in my category.
Hmm.
And so we had to race against them. And it was something where, it was tough because I was the best in the world. And now in the same category, I'm nowhere near the top because they're running so much faster. So, I don't know who came up with that idea to do that, but it's just, it's a very frustrating. And, when you train as much as you train and then you get up to the starting line and you realize is that I'm not going to have a chance, but I'm still going to try to do the best I can. And until they can fix this issue, which, eventually they fix. Uh, but it's just, that was a tough thing. It was a real blow to, my psyche of just, being an athlete and, wanting to be the best I can be. We had and there were no rules back then too, back in the early 90s. There were now they have the MASH rule, the maximum allowable standing height. Back then, they didn't have that. So we had a guy who was
10 feet tall.
there was a guy who was a bilateral below the knee amputee who came out at 6'10",
Wow.
6'10". And, his stride length was incredible, but his turnover speed was not so great. But he was always competitive because he was taking great, big, giant strides. Um, so if someone is a brand new above the amputee, which they were, because I was training people all over the world, and they get to the level of a quarterfinal, semifinal, and now they have no chance, they're not going to want to come back and compete. So, I always say is that some of the best athletes you have not seen yet in the Paralympics just because of opportunity and fairness. And, that's where we got to get eventually the whole, and I don't know how you fix those kind of problems. Now they have, it seems, better categories. Everyone gets their own category. Back then, it didn't happen that way because there wasn't enough bilateral below the knee. There wasn't enough above knee, so they just put everyone together.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know how you do this either. It feels like categorizing is a necessary evil. In a space where, we need to appreciate everybody's individual differences. Um,
They don't wanna have an event that's gonna be 3 weeks long,
yeah,
because they have so many
being
categories. So I get
practical.
it, I understand, but it's it's
uh,
a it's a tough thing, but more and more people as you get, like, the bilateral below than the amputees are running incredible times, and now they like I said, they're the single below the knee amputees probably feel like I felt, how are we competitive? Um, but we'll see how it gets fixed in the future.
it makes me think about Medicare K levels. K1 through 4, trying to categorize people's level of ambulation. Do you pay much attention to these in your work with the Amputee Walking School? Are you you kind of coaching people to try to achieve different levels of mobility in that way?
Yeah, so most people, Mr. Jones, your everyday amputee, they're K2 level amputees.
Mhm.
What I'm trying to do is to get them to the next level, but sometimes it's more of the K1s to get to a K2. So I see both happening. And it happened, just a couple of weeks ago. I met a lady who was not wearing her leg much, and just by one day, just working with her and motivating her, and I keep in touch with her, and she's wearing her leg now every day. And but she's trying to get to. I always say every 500 steps is a new milestone. So she was doing really no steps to where she's now doing 500 steps every day. And once she gets that consistency, she's going to be able to do more. And what I always tell people is that, how can you really tell if you like the prosthesis or if the prosthesis is fitting well unless you're actually using it? So a lot of times it's like, well, the prosthesis is not fitting, it's not working. But if you're not wearing it and wearing it every day, then you're not going to really know. So sometimes the prosthetist gets blamed. Well, it doesn't fit right. They didn't make the leg right, but you got to use it and build that foundation. But most people I work with are K2, and I think that trying to get them to the K3, this way they can get better technology. The big word potential, which used to be around, now it's all fact and matter. What is the need? The need to walk up and down stairs, the need to walk faster than a normal speed, the need to walk on uneven surfaces. Without those needs, the insurance companies are like, well, we gave you a leg, we gave you a great K2 leg. Why do you need something better? And rehab has become more important. Um, and I always tell people is you got to try to get as much rehab as you can. Try to exhaust it. After rehab is over, think about wellness. It might be less expensive. Not that you have to go every other day like you were in therapy, but just someone there to help and coach you to be able to keep where you're at and try to get better. Because as much as therapy likes to give us, the amount of time they do, it's just sometimes not enough. Back in the late 80s and 90s, you got as much time as you needed to learn how to use a prosthetic. Now the technology is better, but we give patients less time to learn how to use it. And when you got the kind of technology like's being provided today, like a power knee or microprocessor knees, the therapists we need to really know how to utilize it to be able to help that patient really get the best out of it.
With your walking schools, do you invite athletic trainers?
Yes. We're trying the next phase of what I want to do is to get athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches to come out and get them more involved because the more and more as I see therapy being less, people are trying to utilize wellness more. So, yes, that's definitely down the road. What's happening now, but it's definitely, I want to get a credentialed with them so that they can come to the program.
Great. I've been talking with an athletic training group here in Pittsburgh that I think would be interested. And I never thought of athletic training as like part of that rehab continuum until recently, talking to you in this group in Pittsburgh and my own experience going to athletic training. Like I don't have any injuries, but I want to be as active and mobile as I can. And it's just so much more effective to train with somebody who really knows what they're doing. They're a professional.
Yeah, because part of what I try to have uh, amputees understand is that after the walking school is over, what's next? Well, you can either have therapy or go to a Planet Fitness, go to a gym. I love if I can get somebody on a treadmill for the first time, so they're not scared of being on a treadmill. Being on a treadmill is the scariest thing in the world as a brand new amputee. You got to step up on a higher height. You're going to be on a moving tread. You got to hold on, maybe for dear life, and you're at maybe 1 mile per hour, like I was. And so, but if we can get you to understand that this is something that could be a great tool for you to do, because when you're walking on a treadmill, you do the one thing we need you to do, which is to take more steps. You're going to be working your hip, you're working on gait. But if we can get, that kind of understanding from the athletic trainers to be able to have someone, get on that treadmill, because a lot of times I might see them where they put them on a bike or a new step when they really need is to be on a treadmill.
Mm. Yeah, just from a safety and confidence standpoint, that doesn't happen. Interesting.
Yeah, because like when you're on, things happen. Like the leg might start to turn. You might need to add a sock, things like that. And this is where the athletic trainers don't really know. They just would stop the treadmill. All right, we'll stop the treadmill. We'll do something else. When it might be something simple as just add a sock.
Hmm.
Like when I'm working with someone on a treadmill, I do interval training. This is for a beginner, and I'll have a chair nearby. I'll stop the treadmill. I'll bring the chair up onto the treadmill, and they'll take a sit right there. We'll wait for recovery time, stand back up, take the chair off, we start again. So we don't have to worry about the getting on and off the treadmill. We just can go and do and maximize our time. But again, you're on that treadmill. You're committed to that exercise.
Do you explicitly address how the fear of falling can be a barrier to learning how to use the prosthesis and for people to achieve their goals?
I always try to, show you is what you need to do that if you have that fear of falling or that fall potentially happen, what do
Hmm.
you do to stop that?
Right.
So like one of the things I always talk about is doing a lunge. A lunge is a great exercise, but also it's a great exercise because when that knee is bending and you don't have control, what do you do to stop it from bending? But also if you do happen to fall, how do you get back up? That's something that we have to teach as well. How do you get up with the prosthesis on? How do you get up with the prosthesis off? So I try to cover all that, but mostly is
Fall
that,
safely too, I imagine.
yeah, I mean, there's no real safe way. If you're gonna fall, it's gonna be an uncontrollable fall. But if you can know again what you need to do, like a lot of these knees, like these microprocessor knees, a C leg, a genium, they have what's called stance lock. You can be able to shift your weight, and within 1 second, the knee is gonna lock. A lot of amputees don't know how to use that. So if you're in a situation of where the leg is gonna bend, you might think you're falling, and you really might not be, but you might think you are. That's just as dangerous as potentially falling. But if you could just shift your weight and get the leg to be in stance lock, then you're going to be safe and have that extra second to recover. So this is where part of the things that we work on and the ADL exercises, we just work on different things, but the focus on mainly is to preventing falling and learning how to control that knee when it's in a bending position. Even when someone in the beginning, it's a subacute, yeah, we see a lot of people with locking knees and weight activated knees. When Mr. Jones comes in with a locking knee, I'll unlock the knee and we'll work on bending and straightening because he needs to learn how to do that so that when we do eventually unlock it for real, it's not going to be the first time. It's going to be something that, yeah, I experienced this before and I know how to control it. So part of the exercises of the foundation, you've got to just work on some of the things that are hard in a safe environment to make it easier down the road.
It's making me think every prosthesis should come with a Todd to teach you how to use it. It's got to be hard for prosthetists to keep track of all the different features available with all the different products.
It is because it's just so many, and that's why a lot of prosthetists will stick to what they know. But the therapists need to be the ones to learn even more because they might have 5 different companies that send patients to them, and they all have different products that they use, and the therapist needs to be on top of all of that. Just so they can best help that patient. There's a big difference between a microprocessor and a hydraulic and a power knee of what you're going to do. And they need to learn all of that. So more and more the therapists have to learn about technology, I feel, especially as it's changing.
Right. But from what I understand, prosthetics is not a big focus within the physical therapy training
It's
program.
on, yeah. It's on like your tip of your pinky finger of what they
Right.
learn about amputees and prosthetics when it really should be a lot more because more amputations are happening every year. There's 185,000 amputations a year now, over 500 a day, and they're saying that this is going to double in the next 20 years. So you're talking over 1,000 amputations a day, so it's going to be a lot more people to help. So they need to really learn more.
Hmm. We have a physical therapy school coming to visit us tomorrow at Humotech, and I'm super excited to get their perspective. I feel like I need to meet more of the people who run these programs to understand how we could potentially be helpful.
Yeah. I so I do classes, I did this once 1 year. I would do at Columbia University here in New York, in Manhattan, New York Medical College, and what they did get and they we kinda bring in some amputees, like a mini walking school, but they get a chance to meet an amputee maybe for the first time and learn how to work with them and be able to ask all the questions, and it's something where the sooner they can learn, the better. And then some of those therapists, if they have interest in working subacute, because we have buildings in New York, they get to come and possibly work with me at subacute. So it's great. The earlier they can get that hands-on experience, the better.
Hmm. Have you experienced with any of the products like you've mentioned too today from Roadrunner and Bionic? Uh, the potential to design products which are easier for people to learn how to use. Is that something you help these companies think through?
I think more and more, like with Bionic M, which is really great. And what they have is the app. They have a great app called
Mm,
MoPro. And what's great and what I love about the app is that you can be able to actually, if I sync that app onto like a big TV, because Mr. Jones can actually see his movements happening in real time and what he's doing right and what he's doing wrong, because it shows when he's yielding, when he's getting gait, the sit to stand feature, when he's shifting enough weight. He sees when he's doing it right and when he's doing it wrong. So there's really interactive learning that's going on. The more that they can do that, the better it is for the patient so they can understand. They got the feedback from the actual knee itself on the Bionic M. You got the buzzes, you got the beeps, all great learning tools, but then having that visual as well is something that is going to help that patient understand how to use it because it's all different technology. There's nothing like, the power knees today, whether it's Bionic M or the power knee itself or Intuity. There's nothing like it. It's something that's going to really, this is here to stay and it's going to change the future and make things so much better. But patients have to understand it,
yeah.
what it does, and the setting it up. Like when I was setting up the Bionic M with my prosthetist here, it took a while, maybe because I was just too finicky on what I wanted, but it took 2 hours. Not saying it's going to take 2 hours, but I kind of knew what I wanted. And then when I thought I knew what I wanted, I was like, no, actually, I don't want that because it's filling in a lot of the blanks of things that I didn't know I needed.
Right.
Um, and people always ask me is, well, aren't you getting weaker because it's under power? And I'm like, no, actually, it's the opposite because I'm doing things I never was doing before, like walking upstairs. I walk up, 200 steps, 200 steps every day. I live in a
Wow.
Victorian house. Yeah.
That's a lot of
Every
steps.
day. That's a lot of steps. Beforehand, I was doing it up with the good, right? Now I'm doing it step over step. But every time I do that, you still have to have voluntary muscle control. So I'm using my hip extensors more than ever. And it's, the muscles or they stay strong. But people think, well, it's powered knees. It's a powered knee. You're going to get weaker. It's not just for people that are weak and have a weak hip. It's going to help them. But the settings, what they have versus maybe what I have, it might be very different. So, and that's what's great about it too, is that you can fine tune those settings to kind of recreate any knee on the market.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the biofeedback in real time, I can see how that would be a game changer. I mean, you as the therapist or the prosthetist can give the patient feedback all day, but there's something about seeing the data right in front of you and being able to directly interpret it yourself. Um,
Yeah. If you're doing an exercise and I'm like, well, Mr. Jones, you did it right, you did it wrong. But I always ask the person, I'm like, do you know how it felt?
mhm.
The feeling of doing it right, the feeling of doing it wrong. And that's what you need to be able to understand because, that feedback, which I'm relying on the patient, is now they can actually see, and it's going to help them to get, again, build a better foundation and get to that end goal, hopefully quicker.
Yeah, and we deal with this a lot in what we do at Humotech, where we're trying to understand preferences and subjective impressions while trialing different feet. It's not always easy to interpret the feedback that the user articulates, verbally. Um, so empowering them to kind of drive the decision making somewhat themselves is often very interesting. Um, it's a shared decision making process, ideally.
Yeah. And I think, you're giving the patient the chance to kind of really feel what they might need and what they want. Um, which, otherwise they would have to take off every single foot, put it on, and that's going to be just take a very long time and it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. So you get the choices of what the prosthetist thinks is good for you. And then that's your choice because you, as the patient, for the first time you get your prosthetic, you don't know what you want. You don't know what you need. But maybe the second time around, you have a better understanding because of what your activity is, but that could be 2, 3 years later. So the more that the person can have that understanding of what the different feet are and what they can, what's the difference between, uh, uh, again, even a roadrunner foot and an ulcer foot is very different. It's very different feet, but they all kind of do the same heel toe, heel toe.
Yeah, and what works better or worse for the individual is, there may be some technical specifications that you could compare, but largely you're reliant on the patient to tell you what they prefer, and that preference can be really significant.
Yeah. Like for me, like back when vertical shock started to get into the industry, vertical shock
Mm,
pylons. And I was never a big fan. I never didn't like it. I didn't like the extra heaviness at the distal end. I didn't like it and I didn't feel the true benefits of it. My socket fit very well and I was felt like I was getting enough support and cushion or but the vertical shock, and I've tried a bunch. Even a gel liner. I wear a suction socket skin fit, which is very different. I have not worn a gel liner. I've tried, but a gel liner to me just feels so foreign because it's not against my skin the same way as a skin fits, suction socket. But
right.
today, there's not many prosthetists that have a true hand skill to make a, skin fit suction socket. There's not that many. There are, but it's becoming less and less.
Mm. So you love your prosthetist, I take it.
I've had many prosthetists over the years. It's not, and I loved all of them because they've helped me with what I needed. The one guy that it really helped to change my true understanding of a socket was Glenn Hutnick, and he was here on Long Island. He's a master at making sockets, and everyone has always tried to fit me with a true ischial containment socket. Because when I was running, I always had more like a sub ischial, the true first sub ischial, because that strut would always, hit me, and it would just cause me to break suction. And so I never wanted it. I always wanted to have that strut cut down. But that's the way I would kind of walk around. Again, we were using our walking leg as our running leg. It wasn't until years and years later when I met Glenn Hutnick and he's like, let me try. And he made me a socket and I was like, this is really different. And it was all about the shape. It's all about how he casted it, just slight differences. Um, yeah, so, I started using an ischial containment socket, not that long ago, but it's something where now I get it, um, what everyone was trying to tell me all those years ago, and I just rejected it because I just didn't want it.
Hmm. Well, Todd, this has been a fascinating discussion. We're getting to the top of the hour here. In closing, uh, our audience tends to be innovators in the prosthetic and exoskeleton realms. So I thought maybe you could share with us some advice for innovators looking to better connect with the communities they serve. Either how could they reach out to you and talk about collaborating, maybe, or how can they connect with their local community? We innovators, I think, often need help bridging that.
Yeah, everyone can reach out to me at amputeewalkingschool.com. And the biggest piece of advice I can really give to everyone, everyone thinks we're in the industry of making prosthetics or doing rehab. We're really in the industry of changing people's lives. And that's what we do every day. Every single person has the ability to change somebody's life. It doesn't take a day, it doesn't even take, an hour. You can change someone's life in 5 minutes and just helping them. Like I said in the beginning, hope equals effort, effort equals independence. And we got to show that person that, this is the pathway, this is what you can do. But when we do this, like every time at the walking school, it's not just me, it's people that come back to the program that have been before and now they want to help and mentor somebody else. Seeing is believing. But we're all in the same business of helping change people's lives. And the oldest person I ever worked with, she was 101 and a half, and she was a bilateral amputee, one leg above the knee, one leg below the knee. And when I went to go see her, I always wear shorts, and I walk in. She sat up in her bed, and she had a tray table next to the bed, and she's like, "I want to walk." And they got her prosthetics. She walked every day with a rolling walker, and she lived to be 106. But what I found out was that the kicker to the story is that she actually lost her legs when she was 90. She went 11 and a half years with no prosthetics. And I always said to myself is how can somebody that was so feisty and so motivated get so left behind? And that's the one thing that for me that drives me every day to do what I do is that I never want to see that happen again. That should never happen. And that's why when, working at the subacute, the one reason I wanted to, I've worked in outpatient, I worked in acute. The one reason I wanted to work at subacute was to be able to help someone from the very beginning to prevent that from ever happening again. And the way you got to do that is you got to build a better foundation, get them ready for next steps of rehab, but you have the ability to change somebody's life and you got to have passion to do that. So the therapists out there, I always commend them. They got to have passion every single day. And prosthetists too. You got to have passion every single day. And if you don't have that passion, it's time to move on. But I meet many people that do have the passion. So whatever I can do to help them to get to that point, I'm here to do it. My
Very
goal is to
inspiring.
have the walk-in school as a national program, and we're on our way to doing that.
Thanks, Todd. Well, let's work together on making that happen. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate this.